Hey guys, it's Mohammed Haloum. I just wanted to make a video, and today's topic is going to be about Saif ul Haq, aka Safir Haq, aka his current pseudonym that he uses is Bao. And in Tempe, Arizona, I went to high school at a place called McClintock. I had somebody I knew there. His name was Mustafa Saleh. Another person I knew there. His name was Zakaria Hassan, or Zach. And I went to high school with them. And some years later in college, they introduced me to somebody named Saif ul Haq. They were very enthusiastic about introducing me to him. It was like they were like propositioning that we be best buddies, and it was kind of weird and uncomfortable, but because like I don't like doing fake friendships. If we mesh, we mesh. If we don't, whatever. I don't like when people are like, if you introduce somebody to a girl, it's one thing. If you like, say, oh, you guys should get married next week, it starts to get really weird, right? And so that's what they were doing. Not that I would date a man, but just as like a metaphor of like the, try to give you an idea of the situation. It was kind of weird and uncomfortable and a little bit forceful. And so, I met the guy and we became somewhat friends, and we hung out in college. After classes, we would go to his dorm and just kick back, have a drink, or whatever. Um, and Yeah, and so we became acquaintances. We weren't really best friends or anything like that, but he's the type of person where he calls everybody his love and his best friend, and one of those people like if they'll meet you and they'll be like, oh, a new best friend, but in reality, their words don't really mean, everybody's definition of what constitutes a certain type of relationship is somewhat different, right? A friend to somebody might be an acquaintance to somebody else. A best friend to somebody, in this case, in his case, would be somebody that he met like one day ago, right? And so, yeah, so we'd kick in college and stuff, and I didn't finish college. I did a couple years, and then I realized that I wanted to do something else, and so I moved on, and I was already before college in high school. I had gotten a few college credits. I had already gotten a blue collar tech degree in welding, which pays pretty well, and I had already had an internship as a um, machinist apprentice, and so I kind of just realized that I like to do everything and keep learning and doing different things, and that pigeonholing myself in a white collar career wasn't really suiting me, and so I kind of moved on and I got different jobs and stuff, and it turns out Saif ul Haq was kind of shadowing me throughout this process, right? He wasn't the young guy he posed to be in college. Um, he's actually, much older than that, and his interest in me was using me as a vessel to embezzle a bunch of money from the government, and we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's what Saif ul Haq was up to, and he was in cahoots with General Charles Brown, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Saif ul Haq, who at the time he gave me his pseudonym Safir Haq, right? That's what Mustafa Saleh and Zakaria Hassan introduced me to him as. They said this is Safir Haq, right? But he was actually Saif ul Haq using a pseudonym because they were all up to no good. And much later on, you'll find out that it wasn't just Mustafa Saleh and Zakaria Hassan from my McClintock High School that were being bribed to try to force a friendship with the promise of a kickback from the embezzlement. It was actually a bunch of people. I mean, you had folks like Clark Weinberger and his girlfriend, trying to have sexual relations with me. And then when I shut that shit down, they're like, oh, you're sexually harassing us. But really, they're just kind of retaliating because some people from their Jewish community got caught raping me, including Lilia Bernanke, including General Tersini. And so they just started playing politics with sexual harassment and sexual assault and stuff like that. And it was like, you guys literally approached me about, sharing your wife, about sharing, having sex with you guys. And I'm not really a swinger or anything. So, I hate to have to even bring that kind of stuff up. It feels really uncomfortable. But these people try to weaponize their genitalia. And all I have to do is state the truth, really. They have to formulate these lies and fabricate information. But, I got their receipts and all the information is there. And in reality, these folks introduced me to Saif ul Haq under his pseudonym, Zakaria Omar Agha, went by Zakaria Hassan. And so it was kind of uncomfortable realizing how for sale some of these people were, right? Because I was younger and I was a little more naive, and the people that I thought were friends turned out to be acquaintances, right? That we were just like bumping into at the mosque back when I was religious and whatnot. And so, yeah, and so I would kick it with Saif ul Haq in college, and he would make me watch Vice documentaries about assassins and about how depressed they are and how they're always shooting up heroin, and he would tell me how he feels kind of similar, and he'd always be smoking weed. We're talking like a whole blunt to himself type shit. I mean, that guy would smoke himself retarded, and then wonder why he had memory issues, wonder why he has comprehension issues. And later on, he'd admit to me that he's intellectually disabled. In fact, his parents kind of did. And so, somewhere along this scheme of Saif ul Haq trying to embezzle money by using my person, me visiting his dorm and whatnot, his parents came up to me one day and they were like, "Look, our son has special needs. He suffers from microcephaly. Basically, his skull is small and won't develop any further, and therefore his brain is small and can't develop further because it's constricted, and he's intellectually stunted. He's clinically retarded, effectively. He gets stupider as time goes by, whereas they were hoping that he would, kind of level out and after maturing to the age of like maybe a 16-year-old, right? They were hoping he would level out, but he actually, they noticed in certain respects he was getting stupider. And I didn't tell them about how much Saif ul Haq would drink, and I didn't tell them about how much he would smoke, but I have a feeling that had something to do with the retardation. And by retardation, we're not using a childish insult. We're saying this guy is literally mentally receding. He's going backwards. And so, yeah, his parents approached me about that, and they're like, "Look, he's very embarrassed about his condition. He can very easily get into a fit of crying and freeze up, and literally his whole body will seize, and he'll fall on the ground and start shaking when he's sad enough." And it's something that happened very frequently, right? Because his mother was an alcoholic, and he always wondered if she would go to hell. And yeah, he's just like a very sensitive, basically a man child, right? And we're not talking like, we'll get to this later. The usual, common definition of man child is, some sort of adult that doesn't pick up his socks or doesn't like to do his own dishes. And you'll find out later that Saif ul Haq does fit that definition of man child as well. But right now we're saying he's literally, he's very immature in, can't string thoughts together very logically, absolutely lacks tactics and strategy in his life. And so his parents kind of always had to look after him. They told me all of this, and they were like, "Look, he's very embarrassed about his condition. So why don't you pretend that you have a condition? We know you're kind of dorky. You like engineering. You're studying engineering at ASU, which I was at the time. Um, and so why don't you tell him you have autism and you're like a gigantic nerd, and sometimes you have trouble socializing and stuff, and that way he can relate to you and he can start sharing information about himself." And so that's exactly what I did. And this was mostly his mom talking to me. His dad was very standoffish about the whole encounter. They were actually in separate cars, and his mom was talking to me from one window. I was just, they kind of drove by me after I left his place, right? And so his mom was talking to me from one window. I went to his dad's window to, just shake his hand and, say salam, which is like a Muslim greeting. His parents are Muslim, or supposedly they are, but they don't really live like it. So I was gonna just say what's up, basically, but he kind of like kept it as brief as possible and like drove off quick, right? Which sketchy, and you'll find out how that ties into things later on. And so yeah, and so the next time I hung out with Saif ul Haq, we did a little intervention slash, hey, I'm dealing with things. I had to pretend I was struggling with being special needs or whatever. And his parents actually paid me to go to the university clinic and like try to get help from him down at ASU. just so I could have like a physical record in case Saif ul Haq wanted to dig deeper and suspected that something was up. Because in the past they had sent fake friends to him to try to be his buddy, but he didn't really mesh with everybody except somebody he grew up with named Adnan. And so his parents have tried this before and it has failed before, right? And so they're like, look, we want you to have records of going to ASU. You need to go to a mental health technician and be like, hey, this is what's going on, blah blah blah. Ooh, boo hoo, I'm ailing from autism. And so I did that for them, and I was really doing it for Saif ul Haq, right? I was pitying him at the time. I had no idea he was going to try to fuck me over later. I had no idea his parents were going to try to fuck me over later. And so I did everything I could for the guy. I mean, it was like, it didn't take much time to go to the university health clinic. It didn't take much time to hang out with him every day and give him some company, something to do besides smoke weed. And so I did that, and we would sit down and we would talk. It'd be like, oh yeah, like I would be like, oh yeah, I struggle to make friends. I'd literally just read shit off Google about autism, right? I'd be like, oh, I struggle to make friends. I have a hard time with this. I have a hard time with that. Um, sometimes social rules just don't make sense to me. And then Saif ul Haq would talk to me about how weird it was, like trying to get ladies, and he would get really specific, right? He'd be like, "Oh, I was at Tempe Town Lake, and I got we found like a really quiet area, and I got a blowjob, and she vacuumed everything, all the semen off of me because I came on myself on accident." And he would just like divulge everything, and his parents loved it, right? Because his parents had their son's house bugged, and they loved it. They loved when I said things about myself, and they loved when their son responded with things about himself. And so we kind of stuck to that, and I did that for a few months. um, but after some time into that semester, I realized, I was like, look, school isn't for me. It's a really nice environment, but I think that's all I was enjoying about university. I didn't enjoy the prospects of a career in engineering. I was like, I kind of want to do more hands-on shit. Um, and so I kind of moved on. And when I stopped going to university, I wasn't in the area as much, and so I wasn't able to visit his little dorm as much. And so we just kind of like uh, hadn't seen each other in a long, long time, right? And so Mustafa Saleh and Zakaria Hassan introduced me to him. Zach also goes by Zakaria Omar Agha. But anyways, it had been a while, and we kind of stopped hanging out. But he would call me every once in a while. We would kick it, um, and so yeah, I started working different jobs. This is exactly what I wanted to do. Blue collar jobs. First, I worked at this place called Pure Logic Industries, which was a pretty interesting spot. It was a machine shop. Um, I had a boss there. His name was Mike Hughes, and he would give me work and stuff, and I learned all sorts of things, and I did all sorts of things that I already knew how to do, and I learned some other things. But I had a boss there that kind of set me up for failure, and he would give me tasks and not train me on them. Like, he'd be like, okay, use this highly permanent paint to stamp these Apache helicopter sheet metal seats, right? And so I'd be like, okay, and I go and I assemble the stamp and I try to stamp the chair, and like I don't get it the first time, because these stamps, it's not like one of those fancy stamps that, I don't know if you've looked inside some of those fancier stamps before, where it has this thing that flips on the inside, and when the stamp is shut, it's soaking in ink, and then when you press it down, it flips off of the ink side, rotates downwards, and stamps things perfectly. No, this was like a piece of wood with some grooves in it, and I had to stick each letter and each number in there, to stamp the mill number on there, the military number for the Apache helicopter seats, because that's the kind of machine shop it was at. I was at. It was a defense machine shop, and and so I was doing all that, and I tried stamping it, and like, it's really hard to sit this thing down perfectly vertically. We're talking like 90 degrees, and then you also have to smush it down to really make sure each letter and each number contacts, because they're different. They're different, like, spacing from the um, what's the opposite of embossed? It's not embossed, like the letters are sticking out, right? And so, but they're barely sticking out compared to the other surface. And so if you stamp the stamp at 89 degrees instead of 90 degrees, you end up with a huge rectangular blotch of ink that has nothing to do with the letters and numbers, and the boss didn't like that, right? And so I was kind of being set up for failure. I didn't get training, and then when something would happen, he'd be like, "Oh my gosh, an entire Apache helicopter seat. What are we gonna do?" And which I thought was kind of wacky, but whatever, small issues. It was my first machine shop helper job, and so I anticipated, naturally you're gonna screw up every once in a while. It's like if you worked at fast food, you're gonna get an order wrong every once in a while. It wasn't the hugest deal, but at one point, the boss man Mike, let me go. He was like, "Hey, things aren't working out. Blah blah blah. We're gonna have to let you go." And so I moved on, um, and looking back, that machine shop wasn't really a job so much as it was a test. They were like, "Oh, this is this kind of military hardware. Oh, this is this kind of military hardware. Oh, this is very secretive. This and that." And so, um, and I didn't, I'm a curious fella, and so I asked questions, but it's not like I was taking pictures of schematics and taking them home and sending them to Russia, right? And that was kind of the kind of place that it was. It's like a Six Sigma machine shop. They want to probe your loyalty to the country, and they want to get as many facades of your personality in respect to how much loyalty you have to the country, so that they can work on security clearances. And so that kind of information is going to crop up later on. Um, but that's the kind of job that was. So that was Pure Logic Industries. I had a somewhat rough experience being a new guy that they hired on, knowing that I had nothing to do with the industry besides being a welder, and things didn't work out. So I took the fall for that one. I was like, whatever. I didn't do an amazing job, and I moved on. And later on, we'll find out that Mike Hughes was actually setting me up for failure, and he had very good reason to do that, being that he's a director within the government, and he has the capacity to issue security clearances, and more importantly, select who gets what in what order. And so I got another job later on down the road. It was at Max Q Technologies, which was a machine shop where I would make cold plates, and that was a pretty cool job. I learned how to operate a machine. I was learning setup at home on my own time. I was learning programming. A couple of the employees there were very interested in teaching me programming, but there was some sexual harassment issues going on, and you know, uh, you know, it was a little bit uncomfortable, but I was able to move past it. And it was only one particular individual, and once again, I chalk that up to my youth and my naivety. I thought we were gonna be like bros and just like kick it and stuff, but he attempted to put like a sexual twist on things, and I was like, I can't do this, and I kind of distanced myself from that particular coworker. Now, there's another coworker there, and his name is Joe McDonough, and Joe is a person that works in intelligence, and more importantly, I should say, he has a relationship with an individual named Rebecca Bauer. Now, when I was working at MaxQ Technologies, I had recently moved out, and I was living with a friend of mine. I was renting a room out from his family, and that was pretty cool. But eventually, some things went on. Not very a good look for that family. Although I like to think they've moved past it and they're good people now. But trust was broken, and I was robbed, and I had to kind of just like leave. And I wasn't gonna. I already felt like I was intruding on a family, like renting a room from them, but I didn't want to go to courts and all that and report things to the police. And so I just I was living next to some people that were renting a house at the time, and I got to know them, and they were pretty chill, and they let me know that they used to be in the military. They worked for the CIA, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's like really interesting. I'd love to like meet you guys more. Like definitely some interesting people to meet. And so I would kick it from them. Eventually, they're like, hey, we're gonna get another place. Are you thinking about moving in with us? I was like, actually, I just recently started having troubles with this roommate, and it's not really forgivable stuff. It's the kind of things that defines a person somewhat permanently for a long period of time, and so I have to move on. And so I would love to move in with you guys. Um, and they're like awesome, and so we went house shopping, and I got a place with them. Anyways, so yeah, that was pretty chill. And then yeah, and at the time I was working at MaxQ Technologies. I was a full-time employee there. I worked through the week as much as I could, and that company gave me a laptop, and um, and now this was a gift from Memo Romero. He knows that I went to high school at a similar time that his daughter went to high school, and we were both involved in something called the Superintendent's Student Advisory Committee. And so basically, it's like student council, but on a district level. All of the students from all of the schools in that school district, some select individuals would meet up together and discuss district-wide issues, and it was pretty cool. I met some amazing people. The superintendent was awesome every time. I'm super glad I met him. He kind of set me on a course for success by describing what to expect in life, and how to be a good person, and how much that can decide your future. And I know that sounds super cheesy, but um, yeah, it was amazing meeting him. It was amazing meeting the speaker that regularly came and visited, and it was a good time, and I enjoyed that. And Memo Romero, my boss at MaxQ Technologies, his daughter would go there too, and he's like, "Look, I know you're in college. I know you kind of recently had trouble at home and you had to move. I know you're not staying with your mother because of issues with her not feeling like you're religious enough," which I was still religious at the time. I just wasn't as religious as my mom wanted me to be, and so like there was some tension there. But she's a sweetheart, and she just wanted me to go to heaven. I don't have a strong relationship with her now because of trust issues and her involvement with Saif ul Haq, but more on that later. And so Memo Romero was like, "Look, I really feel for you. You told me so much about your life, and I know you're trying really hard, and I know you have good intentions, and you try to be a good person. And so, and I know you need a laptop for school, and you're saving up your paychecks for that. Between paying for rent and car and gas and stuff, you're trying to put some money together for school supplies. So I got you this gift laptop." And that was really cool of him. And it was a gift, right? It wasn't like, "Hey, I need you to do such and such for our company," and because there was no company task that I needed to do that I actually needed to take home. As a matter of fact, within the company, we had a Google Drive, and everything was sorted out so that we could do things within the company and share files and interact with each other. And once again, that Google Drive had some military quote unquote secrets, right? And Memo Romero was just conducting another part of that Six Sigma. Oh, are you loyal to our country? Are you going to share this information about these uh, uh, cold plates that we manufacture for these tanks and for the International Space Station? Um, which was probably my favorite part of the company to tangentially be a part of, right? That, like, knowing that parts from our company went to space. I was like, that's fucking awesome. Anyways, so I got a gift laptop from him. I would use it at home for everything that I wanted. It was my laptop. I was super happy about it. Um, it was like, brand new in the box type shit. Like I got to start it up from Windows brand new. I had to make an account. I got the whole welcome message from Microsoft. It was awesome. It was my own laptop. It was brand spanking new. I was happy about it. And so I did whatever I wanted. And I was a very studious person, and I was told that there was upward growth opportunity within the company. And so I tried teaching myself programming for machines. And so the kind of work we did over there, if you imagine a block of metal, you stick it in a machine, it whittles that metal down into whatever shape you want it to be, right? And that's called machining. And when you have a file on the computer that, uh, like a 3D file, it's called a CAD drawing, computer aided design drawing, right? And then when you're telling the machine how to whittle that part down, that block of metal down into a certain part, you're using a CAM program, computer aided machining program. And so I would teach myself CAM on my own time. Um, and I didn't have the really expensive uh, company program that they had. You know, they would use SolidWorks over there, and they were starting to use Fusion 360 because it was free, and they wanted to see what that was all about. And so, you know, I played around with that stuff, and I was a really good employee, and but nothing that I did on that computer actually translated over to work, right? I was never sent home with work. I was never given some sort of computer task. All the work that we did at the company stayed at the company, and I would go home. And I was a lowly operator, right? I was the person that stood at the machine, put a part in the machine, pressed the start button, the metal got whittled down into a part. I would take the part out, put another part in there, put another block of metal in there, and press the start button again, right? That was a little bit of a robotic task, whatever. It paid okay, and it took a little bit of understanding of mechanical engineering, which I had been going to school for. And so, yeah, and you know, since the laptop was mine, I could do whatever I wanted with it. As a human being, I have sexual needs to take care of, and I wasn't dating at the time because it just wasn't the time or place in my life. You know, my housing security wasn't perfect yet, um, and